Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, it's finally that time, man. A lot of you guys have been asking me, Director, what do you think about Jim Harbaugh, former San Diego Chargers quarterback and potentially the future head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers? What are our thoughts on that? Because we've been talking a lot about Bill Belichick and the possibility of him coming to coach Justin Herbert and the Bolts. But what about what's a lot of people's favorite candidate at this point in Jim Harbaugh? Well, I'm here to tell you today, man, this video might shock some people in terms of my perspective and my opinion, but I'm going to tell you right now, if I had to title this video anything, this is why I think Jim Harbaugh could and should be the next coach for the Los Angeles Chargers and maybe even the man to lead us to the promised land. This dude and this move and this shift would be one of the most significant in Chargers history. And honestly, guys, I'm at the point where I think it might just happen. So before we do kick things off, man, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. If you guys want to join the best fantasy platform on the web, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. Get in on the action. You newcomers, definitely take advantage of this Matthew Stafford special for Thursday Night Football. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, a small amount of time you guys take to the like, sub, bell notification. Helps me out a lot. Let's get into it, baby. Lights, camera, action. Jim Harbaugh, the legendary college/NFL coach, could actually become the Chargers' next head coach in Los Angeles. Okay, let's jump right into it, baby. Why I think this is going to happen. A big topic today, man, so everybody buckle up. Might even be a bit of a longer video today, but it's a very, very important topic because the Chargers' future, and a big reason why a lot of us feel rejuvenated right now, is being shaped, okay? And it's being shaped in a way that maybe we've never seen before as Chargers fans. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say we might see some things that we've never seen before in terms of growth, in terms of move by ownership, et cetera, et cetera. So where did this all kick off, man? Well, honestly, yeah. I think a lot of needles moved, a lot of opinions shifted, a lot of realisms came to the surface when the Chargers fired head coach Brandon Staley in the middle of the season just last week. Guys, honestly, raise your hand if you're a Chargers fan that were kind of out on the season until this move happened. Raise your hand that if after this move, the Chargers moving on from Coach Staley, wiping the slate clean, even with the firing of GM Tom Telesco, raise your hand if you feel rejuvenated. Raise your hand if it brought you back into the fold as a Chargers fan. Raise your hand if your interest in this team is skyrocketed because of what we can mold it into, given who we give this team to in terms of head coach and GM. I sure do, man. I'll be honest with you guys. It got a little tough making content there for a minute, okay? This team vastly underperforming, so much talent everywhere on the roster, week after week after week, same story. It was all told by the narrator of very smooth talker, Brandon Staley, that finally has exited the building. And this is a significant move, guys. I got to tell you, the Spanos they don't really do stuff like this very often. A midseason firing is very rare for this combo. You know, honestly, I think a lot of it had to do with money, maybe some with relationships. A lot of people seem to like Brandon Staley, but it does make a very big statement. It made a statement that we got embarrassed. And there's one thing that owners hate the most, it's being embarrassed, especially in the home turf of the seat of Chucky in the toilet bowl of Las Vegas, getting to see your rival smooth talking and nodding and laughing and giggling and pushing each other in the bushes because they absolutely decimated us, the Las Vegas Raiders did. That is humiliating. And it ushered in, I think, maybe a change of heart, a change of mind, a change of method in the Spanoses, and it could lead to some pretty drastic action in the seasons to come. Starting this season, the very first move that was uncharacteristic was the firing of Brandon Staley. Very, very first good move. Cut out the cancer, get ready to bring in the healing, and ultimately, the things that are going to strengthen this team the most, man. Now, what's going on behind the scenes? Well, a lot of people will say that the Chargers' potential has crumbled to the ground. This segment called The Kingdom Has Fallen, okay? Now, with the Chargers head coach being gone, there is still a lot of problems within Los Angeles, okay? Justin Herbert's in there injured. Of course, he'll be better for next season. We do have a bit of a salary cap issue that should be able to be solved by the new guy coming in. Mainly a one-year problem. I want to emphasize this. The Chargers' money problems mainly exist in 2024. After that, it feels pretty steer clear. There's only going to be a few Chargers on contract after that. Sure, we're going to have to make some moves, but at the same time, it's not going to be as binding due to dead cap after 2024, if that makes sense, okay? But ultimately, I would say the reputation revolving around the Chargers is probably the biggest thing that is out there in the universe right now that the Spanoses are probably paying attention to. Finally, after years of ridicule, after years of just being that team that underperforms, it feels like that statement just hit home. The Chargers are kind of the joke of the NFL. And it feels like that sentiment and that statement is finally hitting home for the Spanoses, and it feels like it is ushering in change. It's time for a change, a time for a very, very big one. The culture of the Los Angeles/San Diego Chargers has been mediocre for too long. And I think it stems off of the choices that our ownership has been making over and over and over again like a bunch of madmen. It's time to break that mold. And we're starting to hear whispers of that mold being broken here very, very shortly, guys. I mean, I'm telling you, these big moves, they may be just a few weeks away, man. Like, there's a date coming up. I'll give you guys the date here later in the video of when this decision could be made. It's not too far away. Now, what are some of the whispers that we're hearing? Well, first off, let's take a look at some of these things here. By the way, before I kind of skimmed over, I wasn't going to show this. This is actually very significant to my point that the Spanoses could be changing their minds here. Okay, specifically some of the excerpts in this quote here. These decisions never taken lightly, especially when you consider the number of people they may impact. We are clearly not where we expect to be. However, we need a new vision. A new vision. Okay? Doing nothing in the name of continuity was not a risk I was willing to take. Our fans have stood strong through many ups and downs and close games. They deserve more. And frankly, they've earned more. I think it's time, man. I honestly, guys, and I've been a Chargers fan a long time, and I've heard, the only time I've really heard Spanos kind of, word spit out there was when we moved to Los Angeles. This is uncharacteristic for me, man, at least from what I'm familiar with, okay? Spanos doesn't really go out there and say anything. And this is a pretty big statement that I haven't really heard before from Spanos. And hopefully, it's the ushering in of a new era, change of mind, change of heart, change of conducting business with the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay, now on to the whispers that we're hearing, okay? Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley out. Chargers kind of in a little mini rebuild mode. How long is this going to take? Well, a lot depends on who the next coach of the Chargers is going to be. And honestly, the rumors swirling around the NFL right now, from what I'm hearing, from what I'm reading, from sometimes people reaching out to me with their research, it looks kind of crazy out here, man. The tug of war going on between who's going to be the Chargers' next head coach. I feel like finally the Spanoses understand this. They got enamored and charmed by Brandon Staley, wanted to ride that, next prodigy defensive-minded guy into the sunset last hire. That absolutely did not happen. It feels like there are big names being thrown out there, man. And maybe some that are unproven, maybe first-time head coaching candidates, but some pretty big ones at that, too. This is what I'm trying to say. This is a very, very good year for the Chargers to go out and get a new head coach. There's a lot of really good candidates. The only guy I'm really upset that we missed out on the past couple of years, two of them actually, Brian Daboll, who it sounds like Tom Telesco wanted, but the Spanoses didn't, so it ended up being Brandon Staley. That was a huge misfire. Maybe something that the Spanoses can learn from. And then, of course, who I wanted in Sean Payton, who was practically trying to knock down their door to coach Justin Herbert. They said no. Now he's kicking our butts as the coach of the Denver Broncos. We've seen the turnaround that team has had. All of this, guys, it's impossible. It's impossible not to be Dean Spanos, not to be the Chargers. Watch what's happening around you and say, man, we messed up more ways than one. Man, we may need a dog in here, dude. We may need that next guy in here. We may need to reach for those top shelf booze and open the checkbook a little bit. It's time for a big, big name, guys. And sometimes big name is probably stretched a little too far. I think in this case, it's not. So right now, the whispers. Bill Belichick is leading the odds as of right now, okay, from the sport line, odd makers, Vegas, all that kind of stuff. If people are betting on who's going to be the next head coach, right now, Bill Belichick is at the very top, okay? And if you guys watched my last video, which if you haven't, definitely go check it out, in terms of why I think Bill Belichick could be the next head coach of the Chargers. It has a lot of excerpts as to what's connecting Bill to the Bolts. Open line of communication between the Chargers and the Patriots for very many years. Bill Belichick has outwardly said he loves Justin Herbert. The situation out there in Los Angeles is perfect for him. Very few opportunities to move on from the Patriots and go to a ready-made team in terms of offense where he can revamp the defense and elevate this team into, I would honestly be shocked if we weren't a top half unit under Bill Belichick. At very minimum, what you're getting from Bill Belichick is a very, very good defense, and not one that we're, tossing darts at in the dark here like Brandon Staley. No, this is a proven commodity. Bill Belichick, he's had a top half defense for the better part of, 20 years? It's proven. It would happen. It would happen. But recently, we're hearing new whispers. Okay, we're hearing new whispers that are maybe pushing that narrative down a little bit further. And a big reason why Bill had been my favorite for a long time is because, honestly, Bill seemed like the most realistic option. Honestly, guys, there was a lot pushing Bill in our direction. But lately, it's starting to feel like the Bill talk is coming down a little bit, and the Jim Harbaugh talk is coming up a little bit. The Jim Harbaugh, who's number 2 on this list, is actually getting quite a bit of, I'm not going to say press, but there's a lot of conversations being had about the Michigan coach coming to Los Angeles. Okay? A big reason why we've been so hard on the Bill Belichick train is because of how realistic I felt that was versus maybe how unrealistic. Because up until a couple of days ago, up until literally the firing of Brandon Staley, I wasn't quite sure that Jim Harbaugh would move on from Michigan. But since then, man, since the firing, let's actually go ahead and push this out a little bit. Some more news has surfaced. Resistance within the Chargers to go with Belichick. If you guys want to read this, you can go ahead and pause it. But basically, it says that the Chargers may not like the idea of Bill Belichick coming in and tinkering around with how things work in the front office, the infrastructure of the team, right? How they conduct their business. And honestly, I feel like that's something the Chargers should do. And honestly, again, a lot of people say, Director, you're out on Bill. No, Bill is still definitely one of my preferred coaches in here. And I think this is something that the Chargers should very much so consider. Swallow your pride and let this man come in who's won 6 Super Bowls and build a culture, build an infrastructure for you. The only thing I'm not quite as certain about with Bill is his longevity. He may only be able to coach for another 3, maybe 6 years top, maybe 5 years tops. But this is something that we've been hearing lately is that the Chargers may not be as optimistic at going with the Bill Belichick hire right now because of reluctancy to give up some power. Okay, some of mainly the power that's in the back end, right? The infrastructure of the franchise, basically. And although I'm about that, the Chargers, it may be enough to push that option out of the running for them. I still think they're looking at Bill. I still think it's a very big possibility, and it's one that I would be extremely excited about if Bill came to the Chargers. However, we got to talk about the talks ramping up with this man, Jim Harbaugh. Man, it took us 12 minutes. It's going to be a long video, guys, but I promise you it's going to be worth it. There's a lot of good information in here, okay? Now, for those of you who don't know, Jim Harbaugh would be one of the most spectacular big splash signings that the Chargers have made in their franchise history. There's very few names that surpass what a Jim Harbaugh could do immediately for this team. And it's because this dude is just a winning culture wizard. Everywhere Jim Harbaugh goes, success follows. And it's behind the narrative of teams that have been struggling for years. Years, generations sometimes. Me as a Chargers fan, a fan of 14, 15, maybe going on 16 years, I've been through the ups and downs, but I've mostly seen the mediocrity in terms of team building, in terms of coaching, in terms of just not living up to potential. Sure, injuries and stuff had a lot to do with it, but on the surface, this team has struggled for a long time. And guess what? You guys want to say, hey, who's this Jim Harbaugh guy? Why are we all excited about him? Well, he hasn't coached in the NFL for a long time. Let's start there. The 49ers, before Jim Harbaugh, and this is back in 2010, 2009, they were a joke. I don't know if everybody of you guys remember. The 49ers for 10 years were a joke. I think more specifically 8 years. They were a joke. The records before Jim, 5-11, 7-9, 8-8, 6-8. They hadn't won double-digit games since 2002. And Jim got hired in 2011, mind you. So it has been a long, long time of mediocrity for 49ers fans. Nobody really took that team seriously until this man entered the picture. Harbaugh enters the picture in 2011 and immediately turns the 49ers into a 13-3 team. Immediately. Overnight, y'all. His second year, he would go on to an 11-4 season and took them to the Super Bowl in his second season, dudes. Ultimately, he loses to his brother with the Baltimore Ravens. But how is it not a success story? Ultimately, I would say Harbaugh led the Niners to a 44-19 record with 5 playoff wins and a Super Bowl appearance in 4 seasons. 4 seasons is all it took. And that's why I think we need him right now. Justin Herbert's on the clock, man. We have wasted precious time with this young quarterback. If we need a fast turnaround, and you want the best guy to bet on to do that, Jim Harbaugh is your dude. And you know what? He continued to prove it, even after parting ways with the 49ers, which, mind you, was due to disagreements with ownership and their front office guys. We got to keep that in mind. He's not the easiest guy to get along with, but he gets results. Okay? He then moves on in 2015 to the Michigan Wolverines, who at that time as well, shocker, were a terrible football team. I think he had actually played for Michigan way back in the day. Maybe that had something to do with why he's coming back to coach them. I think it was. Excuse me for not knowing the true history there. But I'm pretty sure that's the case. And at that time, they were very bad. Very reminiscent of what we saw with the San Francisco 49ers. They stunk for like 7 or 8 years straight. And immediately upon Harbaugh's hire, that program turns from a 5-7 team to a 10-3 team his first year. Does that sound familiar? First year with the Niners, it goes 13-3, and in college speak, 10-3 is pretty similar. That is unbelievable. And over his time in Michigan, he's led the Wolverines to a 74-25 record as one of the most lethal teams in all of college football, with an honest shot to make the national championship title in January. In a couple of weeks here, guys. This is one of the most winningest, one of the most turning, worst to first coaches that football has maybe ever seen. And that's what the Chargers need desperately. This next segment called Chargers Need a Culture Shock. And I'm going to include Bill Belichick in this segment, okay? Because I think both of these guys would introduce a shock that this team needs desperately. They need the culture of a Super Bowl-minded head coach. Of course, Bill Belichick has 6 of those as wins. Jim has 0 as wins. But boy, would both of these guys get results with personalities that honestly would straighten out this team and maybe its ownership in some way, shape, or form to a winning culture. This team for too long has been letting us down. This team for too long has been not living up to its expectations, dropping the ball at the very last second. I often tell my friends that ask me, Director, why are you a Chargers fan? With how often they've let you down. And I would tell them it's so hard getting my hopes all the way up here, because they will do that. The Chargers will get your hopes all the way up here before shoving you off the cliff and giving you the most dramatic fall. Heart attack of 12 seconds on your way down before splat. There goes your hopes and dreams. It's been hard. It's been hard. And when I decided to cover this team as basically a career going forward, it was kind of something I knew we were going to have to deal with. And I don't think I want to deal with that anymore. And there's a move that the Chargers can make in just a couple of weeks that could solve that. It's a culture thing. And it's something that needs to change at the top. And honestly, for the first time in 20 years, 15 years, I'm seeing evidence that could happen. Now, Harbaugh, we're going to focus on him because we already talked about Bill. But Bill's in the running for me too. Harbaugh is a strong personality. He's kind of wacky, as a matter of fact. Some people would say maybe a little bit difficult to work under. But his methods have proven effective everywhere he's been. Yes, he's a strong personality, but that translates on the field. He is extremely aggressive and leads one of the nastiest offenses year after year, no matter where he is. You guys are wondering, yeah, he is an offensive-minded head coach and one of the best that we've ever seen. Mediocrity ends here. A Harbaugh hire means that we are entering a new era of Chargers football that changes the shape of what this team's destiny will be 3 years from now, maybe even next season with a Harbaugh hire. And again, this is Harbaugh's speciality. Taking long-time underachieving teams and turning them into championship contenders almost overnight. A shockingly short amount of time is what Harbaugh needs to shape the future of Justin Herbert, who of which we've already wasted 4 years of his career. We cannot afford to waste even a single more year of Justin Herbert's career, and the Harbaugh hire solves that faster than almost anybody else. I would say even faster than Bill Belichick. I think Bill Belichick, it's going to be a 2-3 year plan, kind of building. right? Maybe 1 year you get some nice results. Harbaugh just feels like that shock to the system that would wake the Chargers up overnight and turn them into a contender, because we do have talent. We still have talent on this roster. And most importantly, we have the quarterback. Now, Jim Harbaugh, probably a big thing that goes under the radar, something that I don't think gets mentioned enough in terms of why I think he is special, is the fact that he is such a good delegator, and he's such a good person in terms of surrounding himself with talent. I think the smartest people on earth are the people that surround themselves with smarter people than them. Does that make sense? Bit of a caveat there, but I think it's exactly what you want in a football-minded individual and a head coach and a leader. Yes, Harbaugh likes to hand select his players, and he does have great success there. That's something that I would be excited to see. Honestly, seeing Harbaugh come from the college scene, we're going to have one heck of a draft with him understanding college at that level. Sure, you get all the scouts and stuff out there, but man, dude, get a Blake Corum here. Okay, anyway, unleashing talents of players is something that we've seen for a long time with Jim Harbaugh. However, I'm most impressed with his support staff lately. Now, if you guys know anything about Michigan, I did some research on this. I will say I'm not a huge, NCAA fan, but I did my research on this video. And looking at Michigan's history with Jim Harbaugh, yes, he's always led a very good offense, and ultimately it helped him in terms of their win column. And it took a couple of years before he took a really hard look at the defense and said, we need to change here. They weren't a very good defense for a few years there. And what he wanted seemed a little bit drastic, a little against the grain here. Something that you don't see a lot in college ball. He wanted an NFL-style defense, and he acted on it. He recruits Jesse Minter, who helped his brother, John Harbaugh, shape that lethal defense in Baltimore for years. And he introduces an NFL-style defense, which ultimately, man, that shook the college football scene. And it led to a complete turnaround in 2021, and it has maintained a top 5 defense since then. It's been ridiculous. And that shows me that Harbaugh and his willingness to adjust is there, where we see a guy like Brandon Staley who keeps trying the same thing over and over and over again. The best leaders and the best coaches in football have the willingness to adjust, to change, to assess a situation and make a change. And Harbaugh proved that to me in his time in Michigan. Their defense went from allowing 34 points a game to under 10. I think like 9.5. That's unheard of. Because he had the vision to bring in somebody to delegate that action and fulfill a vision that he felt was going to work. And you know what? It worked out amazing. And meanwhile, his offense has averaged almost 38 points per game and 430 yards per game since 2021. He did his job. He did it very, very well. And he brought in somebody who knew what they're doing on the defense to do that job. And they did it very, very well. He's not going to keep saying to do the same thing over and over and over again. He surrounds himself with people smarter than him in some areas. And that is something that I feel pride stops a lot of people from doing and coaches doing in the NFL. Guys like Brandon Staley. You can stop asking that question. I'm calling the plays. Doesn't that speak miles to what that mentality is like and why we saw so much failure with Brandon Staley? Meanwhile, you got a guy like Jim Harbaugh who, yes, can be stubborn, but I think stubborn for the right reasons. Stubborn in, I'm going to try things my way. I'm going to do things my way. And it's not usually the players or the fans that he's fighting. It's ownership. It's the committee of, NCAA or whatever like that. It's a lot of things working against him where he stays true to himself. He finds a lot of success. You let him work. You let him bring in his people. You're going to find a lot of success there. I love his delegation. I love his willingness to adjust. The big thing I also love, too, is his unbelievable talent to shape quarterbacks. You guys want to see a guy that comes in and just instantly turns names overnight into superstars? It's Jim Harbaugh. This segment called QB Superstardom. Now, under his watch, Jim Harbaugh has led very many good quarterbacks. Okay, and sometimes he doesn't need the quarterback to go out there and be Peyton Manning, but those quarterbacks still perform very, very well. If you take a look at the Michigan program, they look awesome because of what he builds around his quarterbacks. Alex Smith, if you took a look at him with the 49ers beforehand, I think he was his 6th year in San Francisco before Jim showed up. He was okay. He was nothing crazy. But man, did he thrive under Harbaugh. And it was a very short amount of time that he got to play with Harbaugh. And I think Harbaugh, what he did was shape a team around Alex Smith, and honestly some wonderment of QB whispering, that resulted in the support he needed from a running attack and results on the field. Alex Smith went from to whoa in one season, so much so that he was lured to the Kansas City Chiefs shortly afterwards to be their starting quarterback, and he had a lot of success there too. But man, was he a different, machine under Jim Harbaugh. Now in 2012, I think he would have been there a lot longer had it not been for this. In 2012, Alex Smith would go down with injury. It was kind of a scary one, if I remember. He's had a couple of scary injuries. I think he had to do something with his brain. Halfway through the season, he's done. And Harbaugh had already prepared his backup, I think that year before, with Colin Kaepernick, if I'm not mistaken, right? And he saw something in Colin. He'd been grooming him. And honestly, again, here comes the QB whispering. I don't think any of us could have predicted what would happen after that. Alex goes down, who's having a great season. He had a great season prior. In enters Colin Kaepernick, who a lot of us didn't know anything about. And he leads this team to a Super Bowl behind Jim Harbaugh. Unbelievable. Jim Harbaugh rode a backup quarterback to the Super Bowl versus his brother. Of course, he loses that, but the next season, when it comes to quarterback play, Kaepernick would eclipse almost, 4,000 yards in that season. And then you take a look at what he does in Michigan year after year after year with those quarterbacks. Sure, he doesn't need them to be Superman out there, but it's a different beast altogether, and they are very successful. Is it McCarthy out lately there? He's looked very good. And I think the Chargers have a really good quarterback to work behind. I think that's a big reason why Harbaugh would get excited about this hire. But a big thing that I'm very excited about if Harbaugh decides to come to the Chargers is a method and a system that he's put in place pretty much everywhere he's been, and something that we haven't seen, honestly, since LaDainian Tomlinson. We tried maybe with Ryan Matthews. That didn't work out. It's the pound the rock mentality, man. Ultimately, I think the quarterback, and let's say Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick, those guys thrived and benefited greatly from Harbaugh's vicious running attacks. Now, sure, it's hard not to say, man, Harbaugh came into a team with Frank Gore. He was going to have a good running attack, but he takes that everywhere he goes, despite having Frank Gore or not. And I think Harbaugh made it a point to use Frank Gore to his best potential, because Frank Gore was a pretty dang good running back up until then. But immediately upon Harbaugh's hire from 2011 to 2013, Gore would eclipse 3,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, 3 straight Pro Bowl selections. He went bananas. And it very much so benefited the quarterback play. It very much so benefited the offense. These guys were putting points over points over points. And this team transformed into a Super Bowl contender overnight. The Chargers need this, man. We have not had a run game in very many years. We tried with Ryan Matthews. We tried with Melvin Gordon. Nothing was working out. And then, of course, Austin Eckler, a great running back, just doesn't fit the style that we need to really support the quarterback in that way. That would be a huge, huge change that Jim Harbaugh would undoubtedly bring. That Michigan running back, Blake Corum, I would find it very hard to believe that Jim doesn't at least try to bring him in during the draft if there is a hiring there. And that would be a very, very, very good pick for the Chargers. I'll tell you that right now. Now let's talk about why Jim would want to come to the Chargers. Well, there's your crown jewel right there in Justin Herbert. You've been hearing this a lot. I'm going to say it again. The Chargers offer the most attractive head coaching position in the NFL. Vacancy, I should say. This is the most attractive job in football, perhaps. Now, there's a lot of arguments to be made. Maybe in the college scene. I'm including college in this, but in the NFL, the reason why a lot of coaches take college jobs is because it feels like the longevity there is maybe a little bit safer, right? The turnover in the NFL is so high that if you don't go into a good situation, the chances that you're canned are pretty high. Unless you have a ready set table put forth in front of you. And usually sitting at the head of that table is going to be a quarterback. This opportunity does not come by very often. And mind you, this opportunity in terms of combo of having, let's say, a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, as well as a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, when is the last time we've seen something like this? Imagine being Jim Harbaugh, looking at the Chargers roster, led by Justin Herbert, and thinking, hey, man, I could still go out there and get a Brock Bowers. I have a shot at Marvin Harrison Jr. Oh my God, is this an opportunity of a lifetime? And I think this is why we're seeing coaches clamor over this position right now. Harbaugh himself has praised Justin Herbert for being the best young quarterback in football. It was on I think it was a Pat McAfee show. He had a guest on saying that he had talked to Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh talked his ear off about how much he loves Justin Herbert, how he's going to be the next big thing in the NFL. My God, guys. Harbaugh and Herbert would make perhaps the most dangerous combo in the NFL next to guys like Reed and Mahomes. I'm not even kidding. This combo fits like a glove. This combo would be among the most, decorated I've seen in a very, very long time. And it would be very good for Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, in my opinion, I love him. He's among my favorite players ever in the NFL, and I think he's grossly underrated, and it gets my blood boiling every time people are slinging crap at him on social media. But if there's one thing I do have to admit, is the growth of Justin Herbert hasn't been super evident since we drafted him. He was great when we drafted him, and he's great now, but you expect to see some growth there. I haven't really seen much. I've seen some, but not much. And that to me speaks poor coaching. And you know what? Jim Harbaugh would be completely the opposite. We would be catching up on so much lost time instantly in one season. It's ridiculous. If we think Justin Herbert is great now, give him a year or two with Jim Harbaugh and come back at me, man. We could be looking at one of the biggest superstars in the NFL in a very short amount of time with Jim Harbaugh. And Harbaugh understands this. Coaches around the NFL understand this to the point that we're seeing stuff like this. Remember that statement at the top of the show by Dean Spanos? Well, listen to this. Give me Justin Herbert and I'll show them that vision. This is from an anonymous NFL coach texting a beat writer here that's reacting to the Spanos New Vision statement. That doesn't sound like something that Jim Harbaugh would say, does it? I think it does. And ultimately, guys, this is just proof that there are coaches everywhere that understand the value of this job, because it's not just the success that you're going to get, it's the security. Coaching in the NFL for a long period of time is very hard to do, and ultimately why I'm kind of moving on Jim Harbaugh more than I am Bill Belichick, because Jim could probably coach here for 10 years, 12 years, maybe 8, I don't know, a long time, a long, long time, right? Much longer than I think Belichick could. But that's not even possible unless you win. And getting job security in the NFL, that's a great thing to have, very hard to achieve. Justin Herbert is the key to that. And ultimately, I think Jim Harbaugh, I think he's ready to move to the next big thing, dude. I really do. He's done wonders in Michigan and that program, transforming them into one of the best program in football and college ball. But I think he's always had his eyes on the big prize as well. One that is hoisted by his brother currently. If Harbaugh does win a national title in a few weeks here, or even if he doesn't, I think his eyes are on a Super Bowl. I think the Lombardi is the ultimate goal. His brother's got a Lombardi trophy. He's got the title. He's got the ring. And it came against his Niners, of all teams. I can't help but feel that's Jim Harbaugh's ultimate goal as well. And Michigan, no matter how hard they try, no matter how great they are, no matter how much money they throw at him, they cannot offer him that. And he's had his eye on the NFL for years. This is not the first time we're hearing rumors about him making the switch over in recent, seasons. He interviewed for the Denver Broncos, I think, a couple of years ago. Last year, I know he interviewed with the Minnesota Vikings on National Signing Day. Right? He's had interest. I think he's been waiting for the right situation. And boy, did one just present itself. And there's also complications, of course, if you guys have heard with Michigan and the college football committee or whatever, that could push him out. I know the NCAA has a pending suspension against him for something stupid and ridiculous. It sounds like they got out for him. And there are strong signs that his time in Michigan could be over. The Chargers are by far and away the most attractive job, I think, in the NFL and college that he's been linked to. Of course, going back to Michigan is a very attractive thing. I think that's the only thing that contends, and it's a very realistic thing to think that he goes back to Michigan. I think it's absolutely possible. But there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk behind the scenes. And finally, guys, at 34 minutes into this video, I'm going to give you guys some evidence of that. Okay? Here it is. By the way, I was going to show this a second ago. Yes, him and his brother, that's the face of a man that wants to win a Super Bowl. The Chargers have officially, or I should say unofficially, engaged in talks with Jim Harbaugh. A source told Outkick, and this is the guys that were talking about the complications behind the Bill Belichick hire, that a Spanos family confidant acting outside the purview of the Chargers organization with the understanding he'd report back to the Spanos family reached out to the people or to people connected to the University of Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh. The back channel connection was meant to gauge Harbaugh's interest in returning to the NFL. It's not known what that message communication yielded. These are the beginnings. This is how business is done. And I saw this on another video. I'm so sorry I forget the name. I saw it on Twitter, okay? Because I didn't know this before either. This is how business is conducted among the big dogs in the NFL. Owners, right? The boys club. This is how it's kind of done, okay? You make these unofficial connections, unofficial communications, kind of gauge the interest, because you got a lot of things to get prepared for out here. You got a lot of money on the line. You don't want to jump in blind, okay? A lot of unofficial communication starts early. And it is a very big sign that something's happening. Now, it doesn't make anything guaranteed. It absolutely doesn't. But the Chargers, at least from what we understand, and again, maybe take this with a grain of salt if you have to, from what we understand, there is interest. And that's already pretty big because we know, and the Spanoses know, what that interest would entail in terms of money, in terms of, complications with their power maybe a little bit. They know. And for them to communicate anyway tells me that there has been a change of heart, a change of mentality, change in conducting business. Just talking to Harbaugh is a very big deal. Very big deal. And honestly, I think Harbaugh would be very wise to take it. And I think it's a very big possibility because you know what? I feel like if he was going to go back to Michigan, which maybe he's not even thinking about that right now until, the Rose Bowl and the championship game. I think if Harbaugh was going to go back, he would have done it by now. Because if you didn't know this, Harbaugh was already offered a contract by Michigan to the tune of $55 million over 5 years, $11 million a season. But there's a caveat to that. There's a condition. In that contract, it says, hey, here's your money. We're so happy to have you back in Michigan in this program for the next 5 years, but you cannot, under any circumstances, pursue an NFL job after signing this contract. Now, on the surface, that already kind of sounds dumb. But I feel like if Harbaugh really, really, really wanted to stay with Michigan, he would have signed it by now. I think the evidence pointing to his previous interviews with the Broncos and the Vikings telling me that he does have interest. And the fact that he hasn't signed that contract yet leaves that possibility wide open. And by far and away, the team that has the best potential is definitely the Chargers with Justin Herbert. Now, I think these unofficial talks might actually continue here a little bit too in the next coming weeks. Now, of course, January 1st, you guys will see here, the Alabama is going to be playing Michigan in the Rose Bowl, which happens to be in Pasadena, which happens to be, 20, 30 minutes down the road? Who knows what happens in that time, man? Let somebody get a satellite link, keep watch on Harbaugh on his vehicle, see where he's going, keep an eye on the Spanoses as well. Maybe more unofficial talks heat up at this time. But I also think this is a very important, but that on the side, I think this is also a very important event for Harbaugh in this decision. Because he's got roots here, dude. He's got roots in California. He had great success with Stanford. He coached for San Diego. He even played, of course, for the Chargers, right? He's kind of a California guy in some ways. And then, of course, there's his success with the Niners in the NFL that came in San Francisco. It's not too far of a stretch of the imagination to say that Jim likes it in California. And the thought of leading a Justin Herbert-led Chargers in Los Angeles, I think, sweetens the whole deal there. And his presence in California during the Rose Bowl game, I think it's going to be maybe significant to that. And who knows if there's more communication. I don't know. He's going to be busy, obviously. But just being back is probably going to be a big deal. Now, for those of you asking, Director, when could this happen? When could this go down? Well, there's a date. I have a date for you guys. Mark your calendars. Keep Twitter open. Whatever you got to do. Turn notifications on. This next segment is called When? Black Friday. Or I should say Black Monday. And by the way, this is a photo of him coaching San Diego back in the day. His roots here. Now, Black Monday is coming. If you guys don't know what Black Monday is, it's the day at the top of the year where traditionally teams move on from their head coach. A lot of coaches get fired, but you can also start communications, negotiations with new coaches off of other team staff. And I don't know how it works between the NFL and college ball, but I would imagine it's very similar, okay? To be short, on January 7th is the last day of the NFL season. I think that following Monday, which is January 8th, is when you can start opening lines of communication to go out there and make a hire, all right? Just so happens the college championship is being held in Houston on January 8th, that same day, which means that night or the day after, Jim Harbaugh could be on a plane to California, man. He could be on a plane to Los Angeles. It could happen that quickly. Of course, I would say it takes a few more days. There would have to be more communication, more understanding on that side. Maybe we get an answer that we don't like to hear. But if you guys are looking for a date, it's coming up very, very soon. 3 or 4 weeks. Like 3 weeks. Like 3 weeks, and we're probably going to have a very good idea who's going to be the next head coach of the Chargers. What I'm a little bit worried about is that timing a little bit. Great coaches get scooped up really quick. And sometimes an ultimatum can be put on the table by certain coaches. Imagine Bill Belichick wants to be the coach of the Chargers. The Chargers do want him to be the coach as well, but they prefer Jim Harbaugh. So they say, we're going to keep the man, Bill Belichick, on hold while we wait for Jim Harbaugh to finish up playing the championship game or whatever. In that time, somebody could scoop up Bill Belichick. And then perhaps that evening, when Harbaugh is available, or the next day or whatever, he says that maybe he doesn't have any interest, then you lose out on both. Now, of course, those are not the only candidates. Of course, there's other guys out there that I would feel very confident in that maybe don't have a lot of head coaching experience. And of course, a lot of people are saying, is it going to be, Harbaugh, Belichick, or bust? It could be in some ways, but I do think guys like Ben Johnson would be exciting. But I think if I'm the Chargers, it's time. It's time to go for that guy, man. It's time to go for Jim Harbaugh. It's just time. At this point, guys, I'm willing and openly ready to say that I've made the jump. I think Harbaugh is by far and away my number one candidate for the Chargers in terms of head coach. Yes, he's actually closely followed by Bill Belichick. I think both of those guys would be very good for this team. But Jim Harbaugh is your direct and quickest line to a successful future. A direct line to rescuing Justin Herbert in his career, and a direct line to a shock to the system for the Chargers in terms of culture, in terms of identity, in the shortest amount of time possible. It is very, very important that if there's ever any opportunity to get Jim Harbaugh to come coach the Los Angeles Chargers, that the Spanos family and the Chargers and its fans and its players, everybody involved here, from the top to the fans at the bottom, we support this decision and we root for it. We let the Spanoses know that, man, if you guys needed support, if you guys needed a turnaround, if you guys needed, a shift, a change in vision, like you stated, after that firing of Brandon Staley, it is this move right here that's going to make that happen. Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers needs to happen. And you know what? At this point, I think it's very likely. I think it's very likely that the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh could come to an agreement here. I do think that Jim Harbaugh has a very strong chance of being the Chargers' next head coach in 2024. And I got to tell you, man, I think the Chargers fandom, the NFL fandom, we would be lit aflame with excitement if this move does happen. The Chargers' identity and the way teams perceive us and the way fans perceive us and just people in general perceive us would change overnight from the ha-ha choker Los Angeles choker Chargers to the Jim Harbaugh Chargers with Justin Herbert. And in a division, guys, this division already hosts 2 future Hall of Fame coaches in Sean Payton, potentially, and Andy Reid. The Chargers at this point are pretty much obligated to reach for the very top shelf, of them boos for their next leader. It's time to open up the checkbook. It's time for real change. It's time for that vision to truly take shape and to rescue Justin Herbert. We have wasted too much of Justin Herbert's career. Jim Harbaugh is as good of a chance to turn that around in one season as you're ever going to get in the NFL. We begged the Spanos family to let in Sean Payton last season. It didn't happen. Are we about to make that same mistake? Now, of course, there's other conditions. Maybe Jim doesn't want to come. Maybe he wants to stay in Michigan. We don't know what Jim Harbaugh is thinking yet. But if you're paying attention and you look for the clues and you piece it together yourself, I think a lot of Chargers fans, NFL fans, analysts, observationists, whatever, would tell you that there is a very strong chance that Jim Harbaugh could be coming to the Los Angeles Chargers. And that would be one of the most exciting and biggest moves in this franchise's history. So you guys in the comment section below, let me know what you think of this. topic. Do you guys want Jim here? I'm sure like 99% of you are going to say, yes, we do want Jim Harbaugh here. We are 100% on the Jim Harbaugh train. The likeliness of Bill Belichick going down, Jim Harbaugh going up, I think it's all kind of a sign. Jim Harbaugh ultimately could be the better fit here. And I think ultimately, if you want an aggressive, punch him in the mouth, taking full advantage of Justin Herbert and this offense kind of style of football, which, by the way, is probably the funnest to watch as a fan, Jim Harbaugh is your guy. That could be our future here, guys, in 3 weeks. Pay attention to the times, man. They're changing, and they're coming quick. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you liked what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Get Jim Harbaugh, man. And that Super Bowl could be not too far away all of a sudden, dude. Let's go get it.